We got another one of them. Popping at the mouth or the side of his neck when he pouts. No argument, no rebuttal from. He ain't from my town, I don't know him, so I'm guessing he's a clown.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade, and this is an epic size WWE Most Wanted Treasures, a 2-hour episode dedicated to Andre the Giant, featuring a lot of Mark Henry's tears. This episode was by far and away the best. We went from Andre's beginning to his death. We met a lot of his friends. There were some ups and some downs. And then there was Sunny Ono. So it was hilarious. But this episode was pretty good. Linda was in this episode and Vince. So there was a lot. And there was a lot of, people telling personal stories about Andre. So just to get out the way what they were looking for. They were looking for Andre's the Machine's mask, his giant machine mask, from when he tag teamed in Japan. They valued the mask at about $5,000, $3,500 to $5,000, I believe. They wanted one of Andre's passports, which they valued at about $5,000. And, so that's really what they were looking for. They were looking for the giant machine mask, due to his short time away from the WWE, and they were looking for one of his passports, which was a personal request from Stephanie. She wanted one of Andre's passports, and she, throughout the episode, talked about, Andre being her best friend and how she could stand in his cast, both feet, because they had his cast. They have a lot of Andre stuff in the WWE archives already. They have this cast. They have several suit jackets and all kind of stuff like that in there. It is like already an Andre the Giant museum in the WWE archives. But they just wanted some rare items, a passport and a mask. So Stephanie basically was just talking about how, her relationship with Andre, and that, she was about 3 when she first met him or something like that. And and Linda was also there to say, oh yeah, he was so nice with the kids. And then Stephanie tells this really bizarre story about her going on a dinner date with Andre at 14. I was like, what in the hell? But it was kind of told like it was like innocent and sweet. Rhonda Orton, who I think is Randy Orton's aunt, is in here too. Apparently, Andre the Giant proposed to her, and she kind of laughed it off and thought it was a joke because he was like a big rib guy. That's so weird. To think that Andre the Giant could have been Randy Orton's uncle. Oh boy. Ooh, that's scary. But they recruited Big Show and Mark Henry to do the trip. I'm going to try to do a truncated version. You should definitely watch this episode. There's a lot of stuff in it, a lot of Andre history in it. I'm going to just nail some of the things that I thought were cool. Speaking of cool, the big fist on SmackDown. I found out that is Big Show's fist. That they took pictures of Big Show's fist and modeled it and made it the big fist on SmackDown. And they actually gave Big Show the picture. So that's pretty fucking sweet. That is pretty sweet. That Big Show's fist is the SmackDown fist. That's that's like, it's like finding out that, you're the logo for the NBA. I forget what the guy's name is. What the guy's name is, you probably know. You probably watch basketball, and I don't. But I have no idea who that guy is. And he's like the logo for the NBA. Like, that's cool, And it's a nice little piece of trivia that's out there. They also talked about how Big Show has the same disease, or he had the same disease as Andre the Giant, acromegaly. And that Big Show got his worked on when he was in high school, so he stopped growing, but Andre never did. So that is what ended up with him dying. They took some Big Show singlet, and they gonna put it next to the Andre Museum, and put his singlet next to Andre's singlet, because they already have Andre's singlet in the archives. They also, Mark Henry donated a jacket, his debut jacket from like 1994 or 1995. He donated that. So there was a lot of guys donating stuff in this episode. He didn't really have to pay too much for anything. So the first guy they went to go see was Chris Owens. He had went and got a lot of stuff from. He has like an entire Andre room. And like it was awesome. He actually had Andre the Giant's X-ray from his hand that was apparently injured after WrestleMania 3. He had Andre the Giant's X-ray in Big Show's hand. He tested his hand in comparison to Andre's hand. Andre's hand is bigger than his, and Big Show is no small guy. And that's just insane. You know, like Andre's like a fucking dinosaur. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what I got from this episode. Is like Andre the Giant is like a human dinosaur. He's just not only larger than life, he's larger than anything. You know, like his Big Show is a big dude. And if you're bigger than him, you're definitely on a different level. But this guy, they had some various cool stories peppered in. Maybe if I have some time later, I'll talk more about those stories. I'm trying to keep to the episode now. This guy had an Andre the Giant passport from 1981 to 1983. He had it framed. He said that he didn't want to sign it. He didn't want to donate it or sell it. But he did want to offer that a playbill. It is the first ever poster from Vincent McMahon Sr. when he first brought Andre the Giant to the United States to Madison Square Garden rather in 1973. It is the original playbill, and he had it and he gave it to them. He said, "You guys can have this. I'll keep the passport, but you guys can have this." And I was just kind of like, wow, it was fantastic. Like, it was really awesome shit. And I know that, you know, that's got to be something really meaningful for Vince, because he says he was there. You know, Vince was there in 1973 when Andre made his debut in Madison Square Garden. So I know there had to be something, you know, like really emotional, specifically for Vince, because, you know, he gets real emotional about his dad and Andre. They went to go see Tim White in Orlando, and they got to tell some stories. And you know, Tim White was the guy who traveled with Andre during the last, I think he said the last third of Andre's life. He spent time with Tim White traveling, and how traveling was hard on him. And Tim White is the one who suggested that they go see Sunny Ono. And this is where the episode gets really funny, because Sunny Ono, the ever hustling Asian Sunny Ono. So Sunny Ono is a mask collector. They go. For starters, Sunny Ono is a Japanese man, and he lives in the middle of nowhere in Iowa, which is hilarious on its own, right? So he's a mask collector. So he's got Rey Mysterio's mask, he's got Ultimate Dragon's mask, he's got a tiger mask, and he had an original giant machine mask from Andre the Giant. And you know, AJ Francis makes this. Well, he didn't even get to make a suggestion that Sunny Ono sell it. Sunny suggested it, and he started saying, like, "You guys want to make a play for it?" And AJ was like, "Huh?" He was like, "Yeah, you know, I told some people that I'd sell this thing, so there's like a bunch of people trying to buy it," and they started getting angry that Sunny Ono kind of lured them in and set up an auction for the mask, and they were legit mad. Mark Henry was steaming. You know, and then AJ Francis was like, his motivation is pure greed. I'm like, look, man, come on. You know, you're trying to get, I don't know, like, I'm pretty sure he had to pay to get it, you know, but it's not like he's, you know, I guess I'm trying to figure out why he would be mad about that. It's like, no, I completely understand Sunny Ono's motivations here. He's got this thing, people want it. You know, he has no personal attachment to it. It's just a mask that he has, what all these other masks that he has. And sure, he's probably eventually going to end up selling them all. So he sets up this virtual auction of which Big Show and all these guys are going to participate. And Ben Brown told them, don't go over $4,000, but $5,000 if you have to. So when it got to $475, Big Show said $5,000, and I think somebody may have gone over, and then Big Show had to back out, and then Mark Henry got up and walked out. He was so mad at Sunny Ono. They were so angry at Sunny Ono. I wasn't. I was like, you know, WWE gets a lot of shit for free, and like they got a lot of shit for free in this episode too. So I'm not mad that Sunny Ono was trying to get over. Not mad at all. They got a lot of shit for free. And when you see some of the stuff that that they got for free, like in the previous episodes of Treasures, you'd be like, oh, it's about time they have to pay for something, and they have like an unlimited budget, They could have dropped 10 on this thing if they really wanted it. But they knew it was more than one. So, that's kind of the sneaky part of it. They kind of drove the price up on the auction guy. The guy who paid $5,000 for it, they kind of drove the price up on him. Because WWE not only could have afforded it, if they really wanted it, they could have just dropped 10 and told the guy, fuck off, it's mine. But they knew it was another mask out there. They wouldn't have filmed it. They filmed the episode knowing that there was another mask out there. Come on. So, I thought it was a work at first, that the whole Sunny Ono pissed them off thing. Because Big Show wasn't all that upset. He's just kind of like, that's how Sunny Ono is. But AJ Francis and Mark Henry were not amused. But Sunny Ono got like $5,000 or more for the mask, in the virtual auction, which was pretty cool. So that was cool. But Mark Henry was pretty pissed. And so they had to do something to give him his energy back, because he was so down and out about this Andre the Giant thing. And he was like so moved. Like, the Mark Henry is what made this. He was the emotional heartbeat of this story. Like, there's a lot. Like, the McMahons, even though Vince wasn't in there a lot, nor was Linda. They were both present, but they weren't in there a lot. Stephanie's story is, but the McMahons can be kind of machine-like sometimes, where you don't know whether they're working you or not. But Mark Henry, basically says he went to go see Andre in 1982. He saw him live. And, he tells this story about him falling over the banister and kind of like Andre kind of moving him and putting him back on the other side. And how he studied his work. He studied Andre the Giant so that he had learned how to work like a big guy. And then he says something that I think is pretty interesting. He says, like, big guys are usually the bad guys, but Andre was the guy that they threw roses at. Like, he was a new, different kind of big guy. That in wrestling, if you're big, you're usually the heel. But Andre wasn't, and so that makes him feel special. So they showed all the other things that they have in the archives already. Like Andre's back brace, that he used to wear a back brace under his clothes when his back used to hurt. And that he was actually wearing this back brace during WrestleMania 3. And they showed a close-up of the back brace. So that was pretty cool. Linda told a story about them having a swing, like a water massage thing built into the house, the McMahon house, for Andre. And that he was working out, getting prepared for WrestleMania 3 at the house. And, Vince was saying, like, he thought Andre was going to die before WrestleMania 3 because, he was in so much pain and that he was kind of getting out of wrestling. And Vince kind of convinced him to come back and wrestle Hulk Hogan. And, of course, it ended up being gangbusters. No matter whether there was 93,000 people there or not. I mean, Meltzer says that it wasn't, but who the hell knows? It looks like it was 93,000 people there. Shit. But Linda said she was in the press box during WrestleMania 3, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then Stephanie says like how she was personally upset at seeing Andre get slammed and beaten by Hulk Hogan because it felt like the end of an era. And that, she saw her, basically who she knew as a friend, even though she knew it was a work, she still had a huge emotional attachment to Andre and knew that this was going to be like the last things that he ever did, even though he was still around for like a year afterwards, maybe a little bit longer. I think he was still around in the early 90s, like 92, I think he was still there. I think he died in 93. But he was basically crippled at this point. So then they go to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Oh, this is where I forgot to talk about in the archives. They had Andre the Giant's suit. They had a suit that he wore, a tuxedo, and they had Mark Henry try it on. And again, Mark Henry is not a small man, and it looked like he's wearing dinosaur skin. Like you see like Conan the Barbarian, and he's wearing like a bear pelt. That's kind of what it looked like when these guys are trying on Andre's clothes. That's what it looks like. It looks like somebody skinned a bear and threw it over an infant or something like that. It's insane, bro. Like, he's like a fucking dragon at this point. Anyway, they go to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to meet with Mike Hefner, who is a collector, and he has a lot of ring worn gear. And he has some interesting stuff. Like, he's got like a Tito Santana, El Matador jacket. He's got like a Godfather vest, and so that was cool. He had a the main event jacket from Andre the Giant. So the Giant, they weren't even really looking for this because AJ Francis was tired of taking L's. He took an L on the mask, he took an L on the passport, so he just wanted something. And so he goes to see this Mike Hefner, who has this jacket. And it's the jacket that they wore for the NBC special. And Vince talked about how 33 million people saw this, and he says that there were certain people, quote unquote, who looked down on professional wrestling. He said what we call professional wrestling, and says that Andre was integral in the change from how people viewed wrestling, because he was such a huge star and such a mythical figure. And so they wanted to buy this jacket from this guy, and the guy says that he can't sell the jacket. Like, he just can't do it. It's too personal to him. But he says that he is willing to give it to WWE on loan in exchange for a tour of the archives. So they made that deal. So WWE is going to get this Andre the Giant jacket that this Mike Hefner got from Andre's daughter. That's why he didn't want to give it up. He's like, I got this from his daughter. Like, I can't give this up. But he's going to give it to WWE on loan for a certain amount of time in exchange for a tour of the archives. So that was cool. Then they started talking about the ranch in Ellerbe, North Carolina, where they go to the ranch where they meet Jackie Bernard, who is the personal friend of Andre the Giant. Her and her husband Frenchie used to take care of his ranch when he wasn't there. So she knows Andre very well. And basically, Andre wanted to have a space because he was a huge human being, where he could be himself, and it reminded him of home because he's from a small town in France. And he got to basically be himself in this small town of Ellerbe, North Carolina, with these two folks that he met. He met Frenchie in Florida, and Frenchie spoke French because he's French Canadian. And at the time, I think it was in the early 80s. Or is it I think it was the maybe the 70s or something like that, where Andre didn't speak much English. So he was able to befriend Frenchie, who spoke French, and he moved them up to North Carolina. And so at North Carolina, when Andre died, there was still a lot of his stuff at the ranch. So Jackie ended up with all of this stuff, and she didn't know what to do with it. So she took it to this museum that's in Ellerbe, North Carolina. And this is where they kind of struck oil, because they have an Andre the Giant museum full of Jackie's stuff. And so they go there and they got like all of this stuff. They got the second giant machine mask because it's there. Andre the Giant wore a pink jacket to the ring when he was in the 70s, when he was a little bit leaner. And he did not wear stuff like pink jackets very often, so it was pretty special. And Ben Brown wanted all of that stuff, So they paid $5,000, a $5,000 donation, and a trade. They didn't say trading what, to the Ellerbe Museum for the jacket and the mask. So $10,000 total. And then they also had a passport, the 1976 to 1979 passport, which was also a part of the Ellerbe Museum. Jackie didn't want to give them that, but she had a personal one that she had at home that she did give them, and it was the 1979 to 1981 passport. So they got the passport for free. She donated it, but they paid $10,000 for the jacket and the mask. So that was pretty sweet. And Jackie, of course, told a bunch of stories about Andre, living on the ranch, and then they talked about Andre dying. So this was a very personal episode for quite a few people. They got to tell personal stories about Andre, and some of them were funny, some of them were kind of weird. The Tim White and Rhonda Orton and Stephanie, and Vince didn't tell a lot of stories about Andre. Vince is very closed up about these kinds of things. It's really, really strange. But one of my favorite stories is the Andre and the cab. So Greg the Hammer Valentine tells this story about Andre the Giant, being in Japan and him scaring cab drivers. Like they didn't want to let him in cabs because he was too big. So what they would do is they would hide Andre. They would stop a cab and then they would hold the cab so Andre could get in. And then so the cab driver tries to pull off while before Andre can get in, and Andre lifts the back of the cab. Yeah, and Greg Valentine's talked about you can see the wheels spinning because it's off the ground. And I was like, holy shit. Can you imagine he's trying to run off on Andre and he just trying to flip the goddamn cab over? Like that's nuts. So that was cool. It was some really cool stories of, of course, Andre, drinking too much and that kind of thing, him being in so much pain in the later part of his life. But this was an excellent episode, definitely worthy of 2 hours. It told a great story of everybody involved. Mark Henry's personal, Big Show and his personal, both of those guys with their personal interest in Andre the Giant, as far as, Big Show talked earlier in the episode about being billed as the son of Andre the Giant in WCW and what expectations came with that and how, that was hard for him, and, he had to try to figure out how to work, like Andre to make it look presentable and make it look real. And also to carry on that legacy. But, it was a lot to ask a guy who was pretty much a rookie at the time. Because, the Big Show story, he really didn't have any wrestling experience before he was found. So he basically just got snatched up and then thrown in the main event because he's huge. So then you have Mark Henry basically saying, like, talking about, how Andre was like something special for the big guys. And this is a perfect, a great, memory to Andre, to go through and have all this stuff. And the museum should bang from what I'm looking at. I've heard that it's going to be an epic universe when it finally gets done. NBC is building a theme park. It's called Epic Universe. It's going to be in Orlando. It's supposed to rival Disney. So I'm guessing WWE is probably going to build their museum at Epic Universe in Orlando. That's the whispers in the wind. But since Epic Universe is not done being built because the pandemic slowed everything down, so they're completely off track. You're talking about things not being anywhere ready until for another probably 4 or 5 years, So this looks like it might be sweet though, because all of the cool Andre the Giant stuff they got, it's pretty dope, And next week is Ric Flair. Instead of season finale, it's gonna be 2 hours of Ric Flair. I'm looking for Ric Flair's robes and everything. And I'm guessing Charlotte's going to go. And maybe even Rick himself is going to go. So this Andre the Giant episode probably should have been the season finale because it was so dope. But let me know what you guys think. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll talk to you guys later.